Hey, I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. We're a platform that showcases and celebrates the strength, resilience and achievement of women from all walks of life. In each episode, I pose questions to my guests to peel away the layers to reveal the knowledge and the experience that shapes their narrative. So if you're feeling unseen, unheard, or simply looking for inspiration, then the Power of Women podcast is a great place to join the conversation. I'm Di Gillett, and this is the Power of Women podcast. It's actually the first year end at Power of Women, and it has been a season packed full of talking with so many fabulous females, both in Australia and around the world, which I really loved. And I've had the opportunity to speak with a female CEO in Saudi, I can't believe it, but an amazing master shaman on the Gold Coast, renowned female comedians in Australia, which are names that we all know, thought leaders, mindfulness experts, female gin distillers, and that is only scratching the surface. All of these women have powerful stories to tell and some really rich insights to share and pearls of wisdom for you to take on board. And you know, that is what the Power of Women podcast is all about. That's why I developed it, mentoring through storytelling as we unpack the narratives of inspiring women to share with you. A new episode drops every Monday. And whilst this has been a year jam-packed full of learnings, not everything I've actually learned has come from the podcast. Hey, only the other day, I learnt there are plastic sleeves to protect the arms of your glasses whilst having your hair coloured. I also learnt while I was having my nails done with my long-time nail technician the other day that vodka cleans the stains off your nail polish. Who knew? But on a more serious note, what this year has actually taught me is, if you are curious, if you are open to venturing into new territory, and if you are prepared to step outside the comfort zone, the rewards can be fabulous. You may be nervous about getting started, which I understand, as I was. You may keep making excuses as to when is a good time to launch. However, embrace the uncomfortable, because there is no better time to start than right now. So enjoy your break, however and wherever you celebrate. Whilst it has been a tumultuous year, globally, politically and socially, I'm approaching this new year with bucket loads of enthusiasm, and I am really looking forward to connecting with you in 2025.
I believe in understanding what does the full fat version of your dream business look like? Because I tell you one thing for nothing, building any business is hard. Any business. So if you're going to do it, pick the full fat version. Yeah, like you say, beaver away at a light version of what you really want. Go for the full fat version, because that's where your passion is.
I think it's two things really. So one, I actually was a sprinter when I used to sprint 100 and 200 meters when I was a teenager and got to nationals. And so it developed an extremely competitive spirit that I have, but actually most competitive with myself. And I was fortunate enough to be instilled with a lot of confidence as a sort of a young girl. And I think those two things have really are kind of rooted in my character and my personality.
I think there's a fantastic intersection between sport and professional pursuits, and particularly if you've done it competitively.
Totally. I think you have to. It teaches you. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is, I never heed my own guidance, but it does teach you to sort of remain in the moment. Don't get hung up on the past and how you performed. you're, in your last sort of meet or whatever it might be, so the competitive edge is, and obviously being a sprinter, it's the ultimate sort of fast sort of blitz. So that's really where that competitiveness and wanting to keep going and do better, always improve, on your sort of personal best. Even when I go running now, I have Strava, the app, and I'm always kind of
So you're still competing.
Yeah, always looking for that personal best. And listen, I'm 50, so what can I do? It's who I am, so I've just embraced it.
I think I might have a similar gene.
I think you might.
Yeah. So, Sarah, you were in your early 30s when you launched your first online business, mywardrobe.com.
Yeah.
Where did you find the confidence to launch into your own business? Because you weren't that far into your career at that stage.
So I didn't do terribly well academically at school. So I didn't leave to great sort of academic success. But one thing I was fortunate enough to leave with was confidence and the ability to take myself out of my comfort zone. And I was taught, and I always remember the teacher saying, the world is your oyster. And I know that from experience and talking to people that sadly, it's not always the way. And often when we're at our most impressionable in our teens, we can often be told that we're not going to accomplish anything in life. But, that can also be a really kind of key driver if used sort of constructively.
It can be a poke the bear moment,
yeah,
can't it?
Totally.
And it can drive you.
Yeah. So I think this, without even questioning and without overthinking, when I went into my first business, I just went with, failure wasn't an option. I just went with the sense of self-belief.
Gender bias. Have you come up against that?
I certainly didn't feel as though I had a blocker in that way, as many women do. But I think that that's because I sort of created my own path, as it were. And it was in retail and women's wear predominantly. And so there wasn't that gender bias that I know many, many women have experienced.
You think it was more because of the industry that you're playing in lent itself to female entrepreneurs, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was seen as different and refreshing. It did, however, show itself, and I have subsequently experienced it through investor and funding conversations. Because, the stats sort of speak for themselves.
So you mentioned mentors. You had mentors along the way?
When you think about my career, just think about who, the organisations that, I've worked for. When you think about, I've worked for Myer and, Sports School, Cotton On Group, and so let's just name a few of those entrepreneurs. You start with Naomi Milgram. Yep. Who I was very fortunate to work for 15 years. I had the fortune then to work with, Mary Portis.
Oh, wow.
For all of that time on Sports Girl. You think about Nigel Austin, Mick Hardwick, Peter Johnson, Joy Montalto, Steve Bennett.
Yep. I've got a few common
Judy
names
Coomber,
there. Yeah.
Such a retail great. Scott Fife, who leads David Jones. So I suppose they're the mentors that are well known in the industry, but I've also had a coach. So, I've got a coach that I see on a regular basis, Curran Williams. But it's also the teams that you have around you, I think, too, Di, that you learn so much from. So my mentorship isn't just about some of these, the titans of industry, but it's, your A teams that you have around you and that you can learn so much from. It's having a career coach around you. It's having great people in your life. And I think when you evolve as a person, having the right friends in your life, having those right supporters, having that just trusted inner circle is absolutely critical to who you are and who you become. And, they love you for what you are and for all that you're not. And I think I've been very disciplined in my life around who I have in that inner circle, because sometimes, things have to change and people have to change and evolve. So I think that mentorship, is absolutely critical, and that would be one thing that I'd say to anybody is just make sure that, you have the best of the best.
There was a small seed of people who were starting to do this work of bringing these principles into the corporate world, but there weren't that many. And of course, to the point you're making as well, there weren't that many women. I've now worked in this field for over 25 years. There weren't many women in senior leadership roles around the leadership table. But the ones that are, what I've discovered through the work with many of them is what are the practices that they've had that have enabled them to be where they are, and to what you and I were both talking about, and I know I've spoken a bit about your background. Having early in your life, particularly a strong father figure that you admire and get on well with, that encouraged you, that actually told you didn't have limits, has a lot to do with what we believe we can be and do. And that's what I've seen in many of the women leaders that I've worked with here in Australia or anywhere in the world.
But you actually asked Google, you said, I did a PhD, now what?
Yeah.
Did Google have an answer for you?
It did. Well, I was sort of desperate at that point. I knew I didn't want to be a research scientist anymore. And I was just thought, oh, stuff it, I'll just see what Google says. And so there was actually an article which was written in America, which was basically almost the same title as the Google search. And one of the most important things that I took from that article was write down what you love and write down what you didn't love about your PhD. So that was one thing. And the other thing was...
That's career advice that I give. You do a left-hand column and a right-hand column, and it becomes very apparent when you put it down on paper.
It does, yeah. It was amazing. And the other thing they said was, you have a PhD and you've been told you're amazing, but you're not. You actually have to work out what your skill sets are. Are you useful to an employer? And that was like... I hadn't actually realised that. I thought I was all that.
That's nose against the glass stuff.
Yeah, and you really do think you are all that after you've finished a PhD.
I'm smart.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I realised that PhDs aren't about being smart. They're just about being persistent.
But the most important thing for me as a human being, as a leader, is connection. Connection comes with taking the time, taking the space, and giving people a voice. And that's how I choose to spend my time in my office.
Yeah. Hey, as always, please subscribe and follow the Power of Women podcast on whatever platform you get your content. And engage with me on the socials. Until next time. If you're loving the Power of Women podcast, be sure to jump on to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode.